Hey, good morning. It's good to be here early in the morning. So really the subject is I-70, but I want to talk about it in a little bigger context. You know, you think about transportation and it's kind of invisible, right? When transportation works for you, you don't really think about it. Most people don't even know how transportation in this state and in this country is funded because it's just one of those things that you use every day, but until something goes wrong, you really don't think about it. It's kind of like the lights, you know, when you flip the switch, you expect the power to go on and you don't worry about it until it doesn't. Well, that's a good thing because in this country, we have built one of the greatest transportation networks in the entire world. And when you step to the end of your driveway, you think about it, you're connected to the entire world. Your driveway connects you to the entire world. And that's how our economy has prospered. That's how kind of in this country, you know, the personal freedom that we experience, we do what we want, we go where we want. And this transportation network has allowed that to happen. But we're kind of at a pivotal point right now. You know, the investment that our grandparents and our parents made to make that system and make it work like it does, we have not invested over the last 20 years what it takes to keep that in good condition. So we have to make the decision now about, are we going to continue to make the investment that's necessary so we can enjoy and our kids and grandkids can enjoy what we have. So when we talk about the transportation network in this state, you know, we have one of the lowest gas taxes in the country. We definitely have one of the biggest systems, 7th biggest system in the country. We're 47th per mile in investment. So big system, low investment, and definitely we've done a pretty good job with what we've got because we're not the 47th in condition. But very quickly, we are getting to the point where that investment is not able to keep up with what we need to do to keep our system in shape. So we have been forced over the last several years to make some pretty tough decisions. You know, we are talking about what system of roads we're actually going to focus on maintaining. So we have 34,000 miles of road in Missouri. You know, that came about in the 50s when we said we're going to get Missouri out of the mud and we're going to put hard surface roads to most of the places people want to go. That's been a huge benefit to this state, but now it's become a huge burden. Okay? So if we want to keep that, we're going to have to continue to invest in the system. Okay? So right now, does anybody have any idea what they pay a month to use the transportation system in Missouri? Do you have any idea? If you're an average person that drives an average vehicle, you pay somewhere between $40 and $60 a month. If you take the gas tax, the federal gas tax, the sales tax you pay on your automobile, that's about what you pay. So, you know, pretty good deal. You think about what you pay for your cell phone, what you pay for your cable bill, what you pay for those other things, and think about what you depend on from your transportation system every day. That's how you get to work. That's how everything that you gets to you, gets to this store. So you think about what that gets you, and it's a pretty good deal. What we need right now, just to keep the system that we've got in place today in the shape that it's in today, is about another $5 a month. So look in your wallet and say, you know what, for this month, am I willing to spend about another $5? You know, that seems like a pretty good deal to me. Now, how you pay for that, one of the things that we have struggled with probably in this country and definitely in this state is, how are you going to pay for it? You know, nobody can come to consensus on how do you pay for that. You know, we've talked about the gas tax, we've talked about sales tax. There was an initiative a year ago. It failed. We've talked about tolling. You know, support for tolling is lukewarm at best. And really, as we look at all those methods to pay for things, they're about evenly split. You know, there's some people that are okay with tolling, some people think sales tax is the answer, some people that think gas tax is the answer. What I will tell you is that it really doesn't matter to me how we pay for it, because all I need is about that $5 a month. So you know, if you can forego that Starbucks coffee once a month, maybe not eat a McDonald's Happy Meal once a month, that's about $5. So I would tell you that, you know, the two methods that are the most fair and transparent are probably tolling and gas tax. You know, toll, you pay exactly what you use the road, you pay for the road, it pays for that road. Okay, that's a pretty good way to do it. It's been done for years, it's nothing new. Most of the bridges in this country were built as toll bridges. That's how they paid for them. So that's nothing new. The gas tax has been in place for years. It's a fairly efficient way to pay for transportation. You know, you basically pay at the pump, you drive more, you pay more. Pretty fair. The system to collect it is in place. You don't have to pay for it. Everybody kind of understands it. $5 a month would be equivalent for most people of about a 6-cent gas tax increase. That's about what $5 a month would be. So you can talk about how you do it, but really what we need to think about in this state is, do we want the system of roads to remain a viable transportation alternative for us, and do we want those to stay in the condition they're in today? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. And then there's a lot of people that want a lot more. You know, the economy rolls on our transportation system. How good are the connections? Can you depend on just-in-time delivery for your goods and services? That stuff is important to business in this state. People will locate, usually one or two is transportation, when they decide where they're going to locate a business. So if you have a reliable, good maintained transportation system, business wants to be there. How many of you drove in on I-70 today? Did any of you? Okay. Having I-70 as a good route is important. If you go to St. Louis, notice there's this big plant being built somewhere right around Montgomery City. It's a CertainTeed asphalt plant, or a CertainTeed asphalt shingle plant. There's a reason that that plant wants to be there. It's about transportation. It's about maybe some other things too, but I-70 is important, and that's the reason that plant is sitting there today. So when we talk about I-70, let me talk about that. That was the first interstate built in the country. We built the first interstate in Missouri in the entire country. It started in St. Charles County in 1956. A lot of that road is the original road. You know, we've resurfaced it, we've put Band-Aids on it. It's pretty smooth, you know, you can get where you're going, but the reliability of I-70 continues to deteriorate. It used to be that once every 10 times or so that you would drive on I-70, you'd run into some kind of problem. You know, you'd run into a wreck, you'd have problems with us working on the road because we have to. Now that reliability is continuing to go down, and we're spending more and more money every year on I-70 just to keep it in good shape. So what we used to do that would last 15 years and cost X, now lasts 7 years and costs twice as much. And if we don't do what we need to do, which is rebuild I-70, remember it was built in the mid-1950s and 60s, and it was built to carry far less traffic and far lighter loads. It has done a fabulous job of serving Missouri for what we need, but it's time to rebuild it. And if we don't, we're going to spend ever-increasing amounts of money to keep it in good shape, and it's going to suck that away from the rest of the state. So the discussion about I-70 really becomes, what do you want? Do you want us to spend ever more money and have it become less reliable, or do you want to spend the money that we need to so that it becomes the modern road for the next century? One of the things that we're doing is something called Road to Tomorrow. You know, we've talked about tolls, we've talked about gas tax, but one of the things we said is, let's talk about what the road for the next century looks like. And so we put I-70, the 200 miles between Wentzville and Kansas City, out to the world to say, give us your ideas about what we should do with I-70. How do we fund it? What kind of innovation could be used to rebuild that road to make it the road of the future? So we are getting ideas from folks. We still haven't got the silver bullet about how to pay for it, but we're getting a lot of good ideas from innovators around the world that want to do things. So the question to you would be is, what do you want I-70 to be, and are you willing to pay for it?
My name is Joseph Miller, and I am a policy analyst at the Show Me Institute. and today I'm going to talk to you about rebuilding I-70, funding the interstate of the future. And of course, I agree with everything that's just been said, basically about the funding issues at MoDOT, and also the fact that eventually, at some point, I-70 is going to need to be rebuilt. However, we of course do question some of the estimates and some of the ways that that rebuild might happen and how it might be paid for. But I think the thing I want people to walk away with today is that right now I-70 is the road of yesterday. And there is the technology existing in other states. There's the method existing in other areas that can really make I-70 a state-of-the-art road today without having to reach for exotic solutions or exotic technologies. First, I want to ask just a couple of questions, and I want people to think about this as I-70 gets more and more in the news about being rebuilt. And what this picture shows is sort of a traffic estimate, and this comes from a white paper from 2007 that MoDOT put out when they first started talking about a tolling rebuild of I-70. Put out a white paper, and it shows a 1970 daily traffic estimate, 2000 daily traffic estimate, and then projections on what kind of traffic I-70 would have by 2030. So you had the first 30 years of the road and then the next 30 years of the road. And as you can see, they expected sort of the growth from 2000 to 2030 to look as much or greater than the growth from 1970 to 2000. Well, we're about halfway to 2030 now from 2000, so we should expect perhaps a lot more traffic along I-70. But frankly, it's not really the case. This is a chart showing a similar thing going from Kansas City to St. Louis with traffic estimates, daily traffic estimates, in 2000, in 2007, and in 2013. And for most of the points along the road, the traffic level is actually pretty similar. We haven't seen a huge amount of growth, at least in most points on the road. There's been some growth in some areas, other areas it's been rather stable. And that actually fits with a lot of other places in Missouri where we've kind of seen as the population grows slower, as the economy has faced troubles, the traffic really hasn't grown. So the question is, are we going towards 2030 where there's going to be a lot more traffic, or are we going towards a 2030 where it's going to be relatively stable? And that's important because the rebuild scenarios for I-70 that are on the table currently, they're still sort of looking back at those estimates from 2007 as far as I can tell. And each one, the $2 billion option, which is just taking in the median and putting in a third lane on each side, all the way to the $4 billion option, which is essentially building truck-only lanes in the middle of the road and then having two general purpose lanes on the outside on each side. Those are all assuming that we're going to need at least 3 lanes on each side of the road for the next 50 years. And I mean, that would actually, a 6-lane highway going through rural areas is actually not very common in the United States. There's only a few areas where you have huge lengths of road through rural areas that are that wide. I mean, even 55 between St. Louis and Chicago is 2 lanes in the rural areas and only expands to 3 lanes or more when you get into the urban areas along the route. Of course, we're talking about this today because of revenue issues. There's no money to build $2 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion, or even if it were $1 billion. There's no money for that. And probably the main cause of this is MoDOT's declining user revenue base, which is mostly based on the fuel tax, which as you can see has been in long-term decline since about 2005. And while we did see kind of an uptick last year in the amount of gasoline purchased in the state, even if the economy gets a lot better and people drive a lot more, car fuel efficiency by federal mandate is going up very, very quickly. So you can expect that fuel tax revenue is going to fall in MoDOT. That is the conservative estimate. It's probably the wisest thing to think about moving forward. What I want to point out too is that when we talk about rebuilding I-70, a lot of people think we're just going to rebuild it and we'll have the same road today. Well, even if the road is rebuilt to the same width, 2 lanes on each side from Wentzville to Independence. There's a lot of new technology that's come online since the road was built in the mid-50s and mid-60s. You have lots of new things with better safety measures. We have better interchanges. There's better asphalts. There's high friction road surfaces. In the construction techniques, there's ways to make it cheaper, more efficient, and better. And basically, MoDOT does all these things when it builds new roads. There's not an example on here that MoDOT hasn't used yet when it builds new things. And even when it builds new interchanges on I-70, when it's warranted, they build better interchanges, and they put in better asphalt. And of course, when it comes to having the road of the future or the road of today, you have, from the Federal Highway Administration, just on pages and pages and pages, study after study after study of innovative road designs that really just aren't in full use yet because they're newer, basically. You don't need any sort of exotic new technology. You've got lots of innovations that are ready to roll out today. And just like the technology of the road is better, the ways of collecting revenue have actually improved. Because even if you save money on construction, even if you have some new ways of sort of having subscriptions to the road so you can bring in some more revenue, there's nothing out there right now that approaches the multi-billion-dollar mark that is necessary to rebuild I-70 under any reasonable estimate. So that brings us back to the same old solutions, which we've just been talking about, which is general taxes, fuel taxes, and of course highway pricing with tolling. The good news about highway pricing is there's plenty of new technology in that area. When you build a new toll road now, you don't have to have toll booths where everybody stops, creating traffic and creating a hassle for everybody as they search for change. I mean, states that did have that system are now moving towards an open road tolling system where if you have a transponder, you can just go right through collecting points, gantries. And even if you don't have a transponder, sometimes you can just go through and you can go online later and pay based on what your license plate is. It's a very efficient system. There's also high occupancy toll lanes, which allow cities to add new capacity without having to go for general taxes or fuel taxes. Tolling can also help reduce congestion now because you can use dynamic pricing. You can price higher when there's more traffic, and that reduces the traffic so that you don't have to just expand the road whenever traffic starts to build up. You can actually just raise the prices to guarantee free flow. What this map shows is basically toll roads throughout the United States and high occupancy toll roads. And as you can see, many of Missouri's neighbors and most of the states on the East Coast actually make significant use of tolling. And all of these systems are going towards open road tolling now. And Texas especially has been using tolling quite a bit recently. They've run into some political problems as of late, but they're very much in favor. They have been in the past very much in favor of using tolling, and it's been a way for them to add a lot of capacity. There's also a lot of innovations out there in project delivery. Of course, design build is something that MoDOT has used on certain projects, and that's where you essentially allow the private sector not just to build something that MoDOT has designed, but to have a contract for designing a road to certain specifications and then building it. And that can help reduce cost overruns. And of course, there's also public-private partnerships where you can lease a highway to a private company, and they are in charge of designing, building, financing, operating, maintaining the road, essentially taking it all off of the books of the state and adding all of that risk to the private sector. And that protects the taxpayer, and it can also result in a lot of innovation from bringing in the private sector. And as I've been saying, none of this is not an exotic option at all. This is a map of all of the public-private partnership new toll roads that are either planning or constructed in the United States currently. And the most expensive one to date are high occupancy toll lanes in the metropolitan area of Washington, D.C. And that was a $2 billion project. So when we talk about $2 billion to $4 billion for I-70, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility, because a road that has such value as I-70 does, that has a revenue stream that you can use to build the road to the specifications needed, whether that is just expanding it to 3 lanes in the Columbia area and keeping it 2 lanes everywhere else, or building truck-only lanes across the state. Whatever specifications MoDOT is going to need, Missouri is going to need, these kind of partnerships have the capital to deliver it. So with that, I just want to reiterate that I-70 is an aging road. At some point, it needs to be rebuilt. And the question is how, and the question is how to pay for it. But I think that if we look to the innovations that have already been happening throughout the country and the ways of financing it that are available to us now, it's definitely possible to build a state-of-the-art road when we need it and how we need it. And with that, I'll take any questions.